Pressure in line 6 dropped by 4 psi at 3:14 in the morning, and the new monitoring system didn't say a word about it. That's the part that still keeps me up. Not the explosion that almost happened. The silence before it. I'm a water systems operator. 31 years, the last 19 of them at Calderwood Municipal Water in the Sacramento Valley, running the treatment and distribution network for about 140,000 people who turn on their taps every morning and never once think about the man who makes sure what comes out won't kill them. My name's Hollis. No, I'll spare you. People around the plant just call me the old man, even back when I had brown hair, because I worried like one. I worried about chlorine residuals and backflow events and the cast iron mains under 3rd Street that were laid down when Eisenhower was president. Worrying was the job. The job was worrying so that nobody else had to. Here's the thing about municipal water that most folks don't understand. You don't notice it when it works. You notice it exactly one time in your life, and that's the day it doesn't. And by then, it's already a catastrophe. A pressure drop in the wrong main pulls groundwater backward through a cracked seal, and suddenly you've got coliform in the supply to an elementary school. A chlorine pump runs 3 minutes too long on the wrong set point, and you've gassed a maintenance crew. The plant I ran had 212 sensors, 11 booster stations, a 40 million gallon reservoir, and a control logic that I had been hand-tuning for the better part of 2 decades. It wasn't elegant. Half of it ran on a SCADA platform older than the kid they eventually hired to replace me, stitched to a pile of custom scripts I'd written at 2 in the morning over the years, each one a scar from some night when the standard system would have let people get hurt. I want to be honest about something because the comments people leave on stories like mine always ask the same fair question. Why was so much riding on one guy? It's a real flaw, and it was mine as much as anyone's. The truth is, I'd tried to fix it. I'd written the procedures down. I trained 2 younger operators, Ronaldo and a sharp woman named Dot, and they were good, genuinely good. But you can write down a procedure. You can't write down the feeling in your gut when the turbidity meter on the south filter twitches 1/10 of a point at the same moment the river gauge upstream jumps. And you just know, there's mud coming down from a burn scar 40 miles north, and you got about 90 minutes to adjust your coagulant dose before it overwhelms the basins. There's no manual entry for that. I tried to put it in writing once. It came out as 3 pages that said, basically, pay attention to everything, all the time, forever. Which is not a procedure, that's just a person. Everything was fine, more or less, until the district got reorganized. Calderwood had always been a public utility, run by a board of local commissioners, boring people, decent people, a retired dentist and 2 former farmers, and a woman who'd taught 3rd grade for 40 years. They didn't pay great, but they left you alone to do your job. Then the state passed a consolidation bill, and our little district got folded into a regional authority. And the regional authority decided to bring in a private management firm to modernize operations. The firm was called Aperture Infrastructure Group, out of Denver. And they sent us a man named Devlin Marsh. Marsh was maybe 33. He wore a 1/4 zip pullover every single day, like it was a uniform, the kind tech guys wear. And he carried a water bottle the size of a fire extinguisher everywhere he went, which I always thought was a strange flex for a man who'd never once thought about where the water in it came from. He had an MBA from somewhere expensive. He mentioned it the way some men mention their golf handicap, and a way of talking that used a lot of words to say nothing. He'd say things like, "We need to get our arms around the operational envelope, and I want to be very intentional about our optionality going forward." I'd nod and think about the booster pump at Station 4 that needed a new seal. The first time Marsh and I really talked, he called me into the office that used to belong to our plant superintendent, a good man named Walt who'd been quietly shown the door the week Aperture took over. Marsh had already changed it. New monitor, big as a window. One of those treadmill desks. A coffee machine that cost more than my first car. He didn't get up. "So you're the SCADA guy," he said. "I'm the operations manager," I said. "SCADA's part of it." Right. He was scrolling on his laptop. "Listen, big things coming. We're rolling out a new platform across all the Aperture properties. It's called Hydro Sentinel. AI native, predictive, fully autonomous monitoring and control. It's going to take all this." He waved a hand at the wall at 30 years of my life and bring it into the present. I asked him what hydrosentinel was. He turned the laptop around. There was a website with a lot of teal and a video of clean blue water flowing over rocks, which is not what treated municipal water looks like at any point in the process. But I didn't say that. It's a startup, he said, out of Boulder. The founder, Trace, he was in my cohort. Brilliant guy. They've built a machine learning engine that does predictive control for water systems. It learns the system and optimizes it. No more guesswork. His cohort. I filed that away. How many systems are they running? I asked. Live. How many people are drinking water managed by this thing right now? Marsh scrolled. They've got pilot deployments. Several. One's a resort community in Arizona, about 8,000 connections, and a bottling facility. 8,000. We served 140,000, and a bottling facility is a closed industrial loop. That's a kiddie pool, compared to an open municipal distribution network with fire hydrants and backflow risk, and a hospital and 3 dialysis centers that will quite literally call the state if their water quality drifts. I told him that. I tried to keep my voice level. It scales, Marsh said. He said it the way you'd say the sky is blue. Does it handle a chlorine residual decay model across a network with this much dead-end main? I asked. We've got neighborhoods at the end of the line, where water can sit for a day and a line, where water can sit for a day and a half. We have to manage residual, so it's high enough to stay safe at the far end, but not so high people taste it and call the city. That's a balance I tune by hand, by neighborhood, by season. He looked at me for a second. It does residuals. I'm pretty sure residuals are in there. Pretty sure. That was the whole conversation, right there, in 2 words. He was pretty sure. He was going to bet 140,000 people's drinking water on pretty sure, because his friend from business school had a slide deck. What I understood that day, walking back across the plant floor past the clarifiers, was that Marsh didn't actually want to integrate hydrosentinel alongside what I built. He wanted to replace me, because as long as I was there, I was evidence that the human knowledge mattered, and he had told Denver it didn't. I was a line item he'd promised to delete. The realignment, as they called it, came 2 weeks later. They were very polite about it. There was a woman from HR named Priya, who flew in from Denver, and the folder with my name on it, and the number in the folder that was supposed to make me feel okay about 31 years. Marsh sat in on it and spent most of the meeting looking at his phone. They wanted my login credentials, my documentation, every script, every set point, and they wanted it all transferred to my successor by the end of the following week. My successor turned out to be a 26-year-old named Brody who'd done 11 months at hydrosentinel as an implementation specialist, and had, as far as I could tell, never been inside a treatment plant before the day he walked into mine. Nice enough kid. Eager. He asked me on the first day what the big round tanks were, the clarifiers. He didn't know what a clarifier was. I want you to understand that's not a knock on him being young. I was young once too. It's that they put a kid who didn't know what a clarifier was in charge of the thing that keeps cryptosporidium out of a children's hospital. And they paid me to teach him in 5 days. And they genuinely believed 5 days was enough. I did it too. That's the part I'm not proud of and not ashamed of either. I showed up every day that week and I documented and I walked Brody through what I could. But here's what you learn when you actually try to hand off a living system. You can give somebody the what, you cannot give them the why, and the why is the whole job. I could tell Brody, dose the South Basin at this rate. I could not give him the 19 years of watching that basin behave in spring runoff versus summer drawdown that let me know when the number on the screen was lying. I could tell him station 4 reads 2 psi high, subtract it. I could not transfer the memory of the morning I'd figured out that sensor was drifting because a hydrant flush in the Cedar Heights neighborhood always spiked it at the same time, and I'd learned to ignore it. That's not data. That's a relationship with a place. My last day was a Friday. The crews threw me a thing in the break room, sheet cake from the grocery store, the good kind with the sugar flowers. Ronaldo gave me a card, everybody'd signed. Dot hugged me and didn't let go for a long time and said into my shoulder, quiet, so Marsh wouldn't hear. They're gonna call you. You know that. You ready for when they call you? I told her I didn't think they'd call. I was wrong about that, and she knew I was wrong, And that's why she's smarter than me. I drove home over the Calderwood Bridge with the windows down. My wife had dinner going when I got there, and she didn't ask how it went. She just put her hand on the back of my neck while I stood at the counter, and that was the right thing to do. I slept 11 hours that night. First time in 19 years I hadn't had the plant in the back of my head. Hydro Sentinel went live the following Wednesday at midnight. They cut over the whole system at once. Not a phased rollout, not a parallel run where you keep the old system live and watch the new one, shadow it until you trust it, which is what any sane person does, which is what every comment I'd ever read about stuff like this said you do. No, they flipped the switch on the entire distribution network in one shot, at midnight, because Marsh wanted to report to Denver that the migration was complete by the end of the month, and the end of the month was Friday. I know the timeline because Ronaldo kept texting me. He wasn't supposed to. I wasn't supposed to answer. We both did anyway. Thursday, 2 a.m., system keeps overriding the residual set points, says they're inefficient. Dropping key L2 way low on the north dead ends. I sat up in bed reading that. Low chlorine on the dead ends is how you get a boil water notice. I texted back, "Who's there?" He wrote, "Brody." And he's asleep in the break room. By Friday morning it had started to come apart in earnest, and the thing that made it come apart was so stupid and so predictable that I almost laughed. Except it wasn't funny because there were real people on the other end of those pipes. Hydro Sentinel had been trained, Brody proudly told someone, on high-fidelity simulated networked data. Simulated. They'd taught it on a model of a perfect water system, one with no leaks, no 20-year-old valves that don't fully close, no neighborhood where everybody waters their lawn at exactly 6 a.m. and tanks the pressure. The real network didn't match the simulation, so the AI kept correcting the real network to behave more like its model. Closing valves it thought were redundant, throttling pumps it thought were wasteful, smoothing out pressures that I had deliberately kept unsmooth, because that's what kept the far ends of the system alive. Friday at 3:14 a.m., the system, in its infinite optimized wisdom, decided that the pressure in the eastern transmission main was above optimal and throttled the Station 6 booster to bring it down. What it didn't model, because it had never seen a real network, was that Station 6 was the only thing holding back a column of water against a closed check valve at the ridgeline tank. Drop that pressure and the column slams backward. Water hammer. 4 psi on the gauge before the surge and then a pressure spike that, if it had hit the old ductile main on Ridgeline Road, could have split a 40-inch pipe under a residential street at 3 in the morning. The only reason it didn't was that the surge tank I'd argued the old board into funding 8 years earlier, over the objection of a commissioner who thought it was a waste, absorbed it. A piece of dumb steel I'd fought for saved them, and the AI didn't even log the event, because as far as it was concerned, it had successfully optimized the pressure. That's the silence I told you about. The system thought it had done a great job. Saturday, it got worse. The chlorine residuals on the north end finally dropped below the regulatory floor, and the lab confirmed a positive total coliform hit on a routine sample from a sampling station near the high school. That triggers a mandatory cascade. You have to resample. You have to notify the state within 24 hours, and if the resample confirms, you're issuing a boil water advisory to thousands of households. The State Division of Drinking Water got involved. An inspector named Gloria Vandermeer, who I'd known for 15 years and who did not suffer fools, drove up Sunday and started asking questions that Brody could not answer and Marsh could not even understand. And then the dialysis centers called. I keep coming back to this part. Dialysis machines run patients' blood across a membrane against treated water, and that water has to be cleaner than drinking water. The chlorine and chloramine levels have to be controlled tight, because if they spike, you can hemolyze a patient's red blood cells right there in the chair. Our 3 dialysis centers had standing agreements with the plant. We gave them advance notice of any water quality change so they could adjust their own filtration. Hydro Sentinel didn't know those agreements existed. They weren't in the simulation. So when the AI started swinging chloramine levels around, trying to compensate for the low residuals it had itself created, nobody warned the centers. A nurse at the one out on Galloway Road caught a chloramine reading on her own equipment that was climbing, and she shut her whole floor down and sent 6 patients to the emergency room as a precaution, and she was right to. And if she'd been 30 minutes slower, somebody could have died in a vinyl recliner with a needle in their arm. because a guy in a quarter zip wanted to hit a deadline. I found out about that one from the news actually. Local TV. Water quality concerns prompt precautionary measures at Sacramento area dialysis facility. My wife and I were eating dinner and she set down her fork and looked at me and said, "That's yours." And it was. It was mine and it wasn't mine, both at once, and that's a feeling I don't have a good word for. Marsh called me Monday at 7:40 in the morning. I let it ring twice. I'll admit I looked at the screen for a second and felt something I'm not going to pretend was Christian. Then I answered. "Hey," he said. He'd lost the cadence. The optionality and the operational envelopes were gone. "Hey, it's Devlin." "Marsh." From Aperture. Like I might have forgotten the man who took my job. "I know who it is." There was a silence, and then he just sort of exhaled into it. "We're having some issues with the cutover." "I saw the news." "Yeah." Long pause. "The state's here. They're talking about a compliance order. There was an incident at one of the dialysis places, and the residuals on the north side are, the system can't seem to. Brody can't get it to hold the set points, and there's a coliform thing, and," he stopped. I could hear him breathing. "I need you to come back." I had thought about this moment. Not gleefully, whatever Dot might tell you. I'd thought about it, the way you think about a storm you know is coming. And I knew exactly what I was going to say, because I'd had the whole weekend to write it in my head. "Here's how this goes," I said. "I come in as a consultant, not an employee. My rate is $400 an hour, 100-hour minimum, paid as a retainer, wired before I drive over. I don't negotiate that." "Done," he said. No hesitation. That's how I knew how bad it really was. "Second, when I fix this, and I can fix it, I want a 2-year contract back as operations director, my old title, reporting to the regional authority, not to you. Salary's a number I'll send you, and you're going to say yes to it. And there's a clause in it that says no control system on my plant gets changed, modified, replaced, or even touched without my signature. Not Denver's, not Trace's, mine." Okay, yes. Okay, third. This was the one I cared about. The kid, Brody. He doesn't get fired. He didn't do this. You did this. You're going to keep him on, and I'm going to actually train him the right way over a couple years, and someday he'll be good. But he doesn't touch a set point without me until I say so. "Yeah, okay." And fourth, I took a breath. I want it in writing, signed by whoever runs Aperture, that the failure here was caused by the decision to replace a working system with an untested one, against the advice of the operations staff. I'm not doing this so you can spin it. I'm doing this so the next plant they buy doesn't get a hydro sentinel shoved down its throat because somebody upstairs never had to admit this one didn't work. The silence on that one lasted a long time. "You're asking me to put it in writing that I was wrong," he said finally, and there was something almost human in it. "I'm asking you to put it in writing that the staff was right," I said. "There's a difference, and you should learn it. You've got a federal-flavored compliance investigation, a hospital-adjacent incident, a positive coliform, and a press van in your parking lot. You can argue with me, or you can have your water back by Wednesday. Your call." He agreed to all of it before 8 o'clock. I drove in. Same bridge, windows up this time. It was raining. The plant looked wrong from the lot. Too many cars. 2 of them news, 1 a state vehicle. Ronaldo met me at the door, and I swear the kid almost cried. Dot just looked at me and raised one eyebrow, like, "Told you." The first thing I did was kill Hydro Sentinel. I don't mean I filed a ticket. I walked to the main control rack and I pulled the integration, revoked its right access to the PLCs, severed the API, and let it sit there on its little server blinking and optimizing a system it no longer controlled, like a man yelling directions at a car that's already left. My old logic was still there. They'd never deleted it because Brody hadn't known how to and didn't know where it lived. 19 years of scripts, sitting in the same directory, patient as anything. I brought the network back under manual control in about 50 minutes. Then I worked. I won't dramatize it. It was 40 straight hours of the least glamorous work you can imagine. I walked every set point back to where it belonged. I manually flushed the north dead ends to scour the low chlorine water out and get the residuals back up. Opened hydrants in the dark with Ronaldo and Dot. Hundreds of thousands of gallons running into the storm drains under streetlights, the only way to fix it fast. I called the dialysis centers myself, all three, gave them real numbers and a direct line to me, and the nurse on Galloway, her name was Imani, and she had every right to scream at me. Instead, just said, "Okay, talk me through it." And we did, and her floor was back open by Tuesday night. I sat down with Gloria Vandermeer from the state for 2 hours, and I didn't hide anything. I showed her the logs, showed her exactly what the AI had done, showed her the surge event it hadn't recorded, and the override of the residual set points. I told her the truth, which was that the system had been replaced against staff objection and cut over without a parallel run, and that the moment I had control back the violations stopped. She wasn't soft about it. There'd be a compliance order. There'd be a follow-up sampling for 90 days. But she looked at me over her glasses and said, "Glad they got you back." And from Gloria, that was practically a parade. The coliform sample came back clean. The boil water advisory got rescinded after 48 hours. Nobody at the dialysis center was hurt. 6 scared people, 1 heroic nurse, and a near miss that I think about more than the explosion that didn't happen on Ridgeline Road. Marsh was gone within a month. They didn't fire him with any drama. Aperture just quietly moved him to a strategic initiatives role at corporate, which is the kind of job you give a man when you can't fire him but can't let him touch anything either. I heard later he was put in charge of vendor partnerships. Last I knew, Hydro Sentinel lost its Arizona resort contract when word got around, and Trace's startup was looking for a new round of funding it apparently could not find. Turns out, causing a hospital incident is the kind of reference that follows a company. I got my office back. Not Walt's old superintendent office with the treadmill desk. They offered, and I said no. I didn't want the ghost of that meeting in the room. I took a smaller one down the hall with a window that looks out at the clarifiers. Brody's still here. He's getting good, actually. Last week he caught a turbidity drift before I did and called it right, and I didn't tell him how proud that made me, because that's not how you do it with a young man. But I'm telling you. Dot framed something and put it on my wall. It's a printout of one of Hydro Sentinel's last automated status messages, the one it generated at 3:15 the morning of the surge. It says, in cheerful little machine text, "All systems nominal. Network operating at optimal efficiency." She drew an arrow to it in red marker and wrote underneath, in her handwriting, narrated by a guy who was asleep. "I keep it because it's funny, sure. That I keep it Mrs. the Pruddy, sure. But I keep it mostly because it's the truest thing in the building. You can build a machine that monitors 200 sensors and never blinks and never sleeps and never asks for a raise. What you cannot build, yet, is a machine that knows the surge tank is there because somebody fought for it 8 years ago, or that the Cedar Heights flash spikes the Station 4 sensor every Tuesday, or that Imani at the dialysis center needs 45 minutes of warning and not 30. That stuff isn't in the data. It's in the people who stayed long enough to learn the place. I pour my coffee every morning, and I look out at those tanks turning slow and grey in the dawn, and I think about how close it came, and how the thing that saved 140,000 people from a really bad week was not a smarter algorithm. It was a check valve, a surge tank, 3 good people willing to run hydrants in the dark, and a nurse named Imani who trusted her own eyes over the screen. Some things you don't optimize. Some things you don't optimize. Some things you just have to know. And the day a company forgets there's a difference is the day you should already have your boots by the door. Because they're going to call you, and when they do, you'd better know your number. I've had a long time now to sit with what happened at Calderwood, and the thing I keep landing on is that none of it was really about the machine. The machine did exactly what it was built to do. It optimized. It never lied to me. It just didn't know what it didn't know, and nobody above it had the honesty to admit the same about themselves. Devlin Marsh didn't fail because he was young, or because he liked his quarter zip and his giant water bottle. He failed because he never once asked the question that mattered. What happens to a real person if I'm wrong? And a man who won't ask that question has no business standing between 140,000 people and the water they drink. What saved us wasn't luck, and it wasn't a smarter algorithm. It was a chain of small, unglamorous choices made by people who decided long before that morning what kind of people they were going to be. The surge tank held because 8 years earlier I'd done the unpopular thing and fought a budget fight I knew would make me enemies. Imani shut her dialysis floor down because she trusted her own eyes and her own conscience over a screen that told her everything was fine. And Ronaldo ran hydrants in the dark on a weekend they weren't being paid for because the work mattered more to them than the clock. That's the part no startup can put in a slide deck. Doing right by people when no one's watching isn't a feature. It's a habit you build one quiet decision at a time for years until it's just who you are. And I'll tell you the other two things that carried us, because I think about them every morning now. One is plain old knowing your trade, not the certificate on the wall, but the deep, patient understanding of a place that only comes from staying long enough to learn its moods. 19 years of watching one basin behave told me when a number on a screen was lying. You can't shortcut that. You can only earn it. The other is the stubbornness to keep standing back up. There were nights that week I wanted to let them drown in the mess they'd made, and a softer version of me would have. But the same grit that kept me at that desk through 31 years of 2 a.m. emergencies is what let me walk back through that door and work 40 straight hours to fix what wasn't mine to fix. Persistence isn't loud, it's just showing up one more time than you want to. So if you take anything from an old waterman, take this. Be the person who asks who gets hurt if I'm wrong. Learn your craft so deeply that you can feel the truth before the data confirms it. And when it all falls apart, and someday it will, be too stubborn to quit. Those 3 things saved 140,000 strangers who never know my name, and they cost no money at all. They never go obsolete, and nobody can lay them off.